I discovered my mechanic shop's terrifying rules. Are they cursed by a dark force? I never should have opened that door the moment I did. Everything changed. My normal life at the shop was shattered into confusion and fear. I was just an ordinary mechanic, surrounded by the hum of engines and the scent of motor oil. But that day, a chill swept through the air, a whisper of dread that crawled down my spine. It was a typical Wednesday, the sun hanging low and heavy in the sky. I wiped my hands on a rag, ready to tackle the next car in line when I felt Ida's presence, something lurking just beyond the shadows. The light in the shop dimmed, and a cold draft wrapped around me like a shroud. I glanced toward the back room. The storeroom I rarely ventured into. It was dark in there. Too dark. The kind of darkness that felt alive, breathing, watching. I heard a faint scraping noise, like metal against concrete. My heart raced. No one was supposed to be back there. I should have turned away, locked the door, called for help. But my curiosity, my stupid, reckless curiosity, got the better of me. As I stepped closer, the chill intensified. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision, twisting like serpents. There was a smell too, something rancid, like rot mixed with gasoline. Each breath tasted wrong. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of unintelligible murmurs, echoing off the walls. Get out, they seemed to say, but I couldn't pull myself away. Suddenly, an old toolbox shook on a nearby bench, clattering to the ground with a deafening clang. I jumped back, the noise reverberating in my ears. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob, but it felt like ice. A skittering sound came from the dark room, and I froze. What was in there? The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open a crack. Moonlight streamed in, illuminating something on the floor. It was a scrap of paper, stained and torn, with strange symbols drawn across it. My blood ran cold as I recognized them. They weren't just random shapes. They were curses, dark ink twisted in horrifying ways. Why were they here in my shop? Who had left them? The shadows deepened, and dread settled in my chest like a lead weight. I turned to leave, desperation clawing at me, but another sound stopped me in my tracks, a low growl from within the room. My breath hitched. What the hell is that? I whispered, my voice trembling. In one swift motion, I slammed the door shut behind me, my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I leaned against the door, listening. Silence, then, a loud bang. The door rattled as something hit it from the other side. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for my phone, but it slipped from my shaking hands, crashing to the ground. What was happening? I glanced toward the windows. The last remnants of daylight faded, suffocating the shop in darkness. I had to get out, had to escape whatever dark force had claimed my space. But before I could take a step, the door flew open, and all I could see was a figure, shrouded in black, standing in the doorway, the whispers erupting into a shrill scream. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure in the doorway was featureless, an obsidian silhouette that swallowed the light around it. I stepped back, heart pounding and breath hitching in panic. The stench of decay pierced my senses, and the whispers morphed into a chaotic chorus of voices, each one overlapping the other, clawing for attention. Help us, join us, they urged in a haunting melody that vibrated in my bones. That I stumbled over a toolbox, the sharp clink of metal hitting concrete breaking the spell, and the figure advanced. It glided rather than walked, the edges of its form billowing like smoke against the walls of the dim shop. The growl I had heard earlier now came from it, a low, growling rumble that made my stomach churn. I needed to escape, to get free of whatever malevolence had seeped into my sanctuary. Frantically, I turned toward the front. The large rolling door that once felt like a barrier of safety now loomed like an unforgiving tomb. I rushed to it, praying the mechanism would release me from the nightmare unfolding behind me. It felt as if the world outside had dimmed, an unnatural twilight cloaking the street. With every ounce of strength, I heaved the door only for it to emit a dreadful creaking sound, as if it were resisting my desperate plea. The figure hissed behind me, the urgency of its presence escalating, and I knew I couldn't linger. The door groaned open just enough for me to squeeze through, but as I forced my way past, I felt a cold grip around my ankle that I glanced down, my heart nearly imploding at the sight of shadowy tendrils wrapping around me like serpents. Get out! The whispers echoed, a stark contrast to the searing panic that flooded my mind. I kicked and fought against the growing dread that darkened my vision. The tendrils recoiled, but only for a moment. They wanted me, yearned for my surrender. I burst outside, gasping in the fresh night air, but it tasted foul like oil and iron, the fragrance of dread permeating the cool surroundings. The streetlights flickered violently overhead, casting erratic shadows that danced along the asphalt. I stumbled forward, desperate to distance myself from that wretched mechanical haven. As I sprinted down the sidewalk, my mind raced. What had I uncovered? What cursed legacy had I become entangled in? I dared a glance backward, half expecting to see the figure hovering just behind me, but all I could glimpse was the abyss of my shop, the windows dark as ink. Then, a sickening sound, metal grinding against metal, shuddered through the night, as if the very walls of the building were protesting my escape. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I fumbled it out, almost dropping it again, but somehow kept hold. The screen flashed with a message from Sarah, my girlfriend. It flickered with her name, lit up with urgency. "I'm at the shop. What's going on?" The lights just went out. A wave of dread crashed over me. I couldn't let her go inside, not with that thing lurking in the darkness. My fingers trembled as I tried to type a reply, but my heart raced with frantic urgency. "Get out. It's not safe." I managed to send before adrenaline thrilled me to motion again, but as I turned to the shop one last time, I gasped. The silhouette stood in the doorway, undeterred, as the shadows around it spun like a cyclone. Then, something else emerged, a dozen more, shrouded figures flowing out behind it, walking on air, their murmurings joining into a collective scream. They were beckoning with cruel anticipation, arms outstretched, waiting for something all too tempting. My breath halted as I realized what they wanted. Not just me, but something far more sinister. They were hungry. I sprinted down the street, knowing I had no time. I made it 2 blocks before a bone-chilling realization washed over me. Sarah. Where was she? A sudden piercing scream erupted from the direction of the shop, echoing through the empty streets, grasping my heart with icy fingers. I froze, panic clawing at my throat. The whispering chorus returned, now louder, more insistent. Join us, Brad. Don't look back." But I couldn't help it. As I turned around, the light from the shop flickered back to life, illuminating the pathway between me and those wretched things. Alone, or worse, with her, and then I saw it. Emerging from the glow, just as the figures dissipated into the darkness, a familiar shape approached. Her face twisted in terror, shadow clinging to her like a shroud, and behind her, the figures returned like a tide. They were coming for us both. The air grew thick as I stood frozen, dreading the moment I could no longer see her face, twisted as it was. "Sarah!" I screamed, my voice strangled and frayed, as she staggered toward me, the light from the shop flickering ominously behind her. Brad, her eyes were wide, glistening with a fearful sheen, reflecting something almost beyond comprehension. There were no words, only the pulse of fear that wrapped around us like a vice. I could feel the encroaching darkness swallowing the street behind her, the wails of the figures resonating through the air like a sinister hymn. "Run!" I shouted again, shattering the silence that bound us. Just as I turned to pull her away, she lunged forward, collapsing into my arms, shivering as if she were caught in a winter chill. Her body was hot against mine, but her skin was pale, almost translucent. "What happened?" I breathed, the urgency flooding my tone. In the depths of her eyes, I saw a glimpse of an ancient horror mirrored in the depths of my own soul. She had glimpsed the abyss that I don't know. "I was looking for you." The lights went out, and there was this noise. It felt like something wanted me, like hands crawling over my skin. She whimpered, her breath hitching as if recounting a nightmare. The crumbling shadows at the shop's entrance swarmed in my peripheral vision, silently gathering strength. "We can't stay here," I urged, pulling her toward the street. I attempted to wash away the dread that coiled in my gut, but it clung fiercely, gnawing at my instincts. The whispers intensified, threading through the night-era cacophony of pleas and demands that suffocated the rational mind. This way, I guided her down a side alley, its narrow confines shrouded in darkness. The stone walls loomed like sentinels, watching our desperate flight. My heart thudded violently as the shadows behind us twisted, morphing into elongated figures, the thieves of light, ever pursuing. As we dashed deeper into the alley, a sudden pulse of heat erupted from the darkness, sending a wave of suffocating terror washing over us. I could hear it amid and chaotic echoing through the narrow space like the rapid beating of a dying heart. The walls felt alive, pulsating with a sinister energy, as though they too were complicit in the horror that sought us. "Help us, join us," they groaned, the sound maddeningly intoxicating. "Don't listen," I pleaded, grasping Sarah's hand tighter as we pressed on. Her grip faltered, and I turned, noticing her staring blankly down an unlit stretch of the alley. An undeniable pull emanated from that direction, a magnetic force that threatened to snatch her away from me. "Sarah," I cried, shaking her gently as desperation clawed at my chest. But she merely stood there, entranced, her breath slowing as a faint glow began to illuminate the walls around her. I felt a cold wave wash over me, a shadowy figure slipping into my periphery, forcing my instincts into overdrive. "And oh, stay with me." I lunged forward, grabbing her shoulder before I felt the tug of 1,000 whispers trying to sink their claws into her mind. The shadows rippling along the walls solidified, swirling around us like mist, eager to draw us into their wretched embrace. "Brad, I can hear them," she murmured, her voice now distant, almost serene. They're saying it will be better if we just surrender. No. We're getting out of here," I shouted, pulling her with a force of fury as I dragged her toward the alley's mouth. But the darkness clawed and gnawed, like a hungry beast unwilling to let its prey escape. Suddenly, a flash of light illuminated the alleyway, slicing through the dark like a sword. It was a car, a passing vehicle from the street beyond, headlights burning bright and menacing. My heart raced with renewed hope. But then it happened. As the light flickered, the shadows receded for a breath, revealing what lurked within. I gasped, nearly dropping Sarah. It was impossibly close, a figure draped in the fog of the alley, its face now visible. Not featureless but contorted, resembling a grotesque caricature of agony and longing. Its mouth moved in rhythmic unison with the whispers, beckoning me closer. "Brad," Sarah whimpered, her voice breaking through the night, as she succumbed to the lure of the shadow, her face reflecting a desperate yearning. "Don't," I shouted, and with a primal roar, I yanked her hard against me. The otherworldly figure lunged forward, and in that heart-stopping instant, time fractured. The shadows twisted and churned as if the fabric of reality itself was fraying, and then crack. The sound was deafening. I felt the ground beneath us shatter, a darkness so potent it swallowed everything whole. With a scream that echoed through the alley, Sarah slipped from my grasp, pulled away into the ravenous void, and "Oh, Sarah," I cried, reaching desperately, frantically, while the dark figures closed in with a hunger that was all too palpable. The alley twisted, swirling into nothingness, and as I stumbled backward, the echo of my own scream trailed behind me, a futile plea drowned out by the shadowed I. In an instant, I stood alone, teetering on the precipice of despair. The abyss whispered my name, seductive and cold, inviting me to join the cacophony of lost souls. But this time, I would not let them win. I had to fight. I had to find her. With that resolve ignited, I turned, racing back through the alley, determined to unearth the truth buried beneath the layers of horror before it swallowed me whole as well. But the darkness was closing in, and behind me, I heard it again, that insidious chorus, beckoning me, chanting in a rhythm that pulsed through my very veins. Join us, and I knew, as I plunged back toward the light, that I was not finished with them. They would stop at nothing until I became one of them. The shadows recoiled as I emerged from the alley. The bright streetlights felt like a fragile halo of protection. My heart pounded like a war drum against my ribs, but I fought against the nagging dread. I couldn't abandon her. Not now, not ever. The echoes of Sarah's voice haunted me, weaving through my thoughts like a melody that grew hauntingly dissonant. "Where did you go?" I muttered, scanning the area with frantic desperation, the night air thick like molasses. The street seemed unrecognizable now, the once familiar stores transformed into ominous sentinels decked in dark veils. I sprinted towards the edge of the street where I had last seen her, a twisting panic gripping me as I forced myself to push forward, each step weighed down by an invisible force. Under the flickering street lamps, their unsteady light revealed swirling tendrils of shadow stretching towards me, hungry and persistent, as if urging me back into the depths of despair. I could feel them at my back. They were waiting, prowling just beyond the borders of perception, yearning to drag me back. That I stumbled to a stop outside an old diner, its neon sign buzzing, a pulse of light that seemed to flutter with my anxiety. I brushed past the door, nearly shouting, "Sarah?" The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of grease and decay. It was eerily quiet, illuminated only by the flickering fluorescence above. Glimpses of movement caught my eye, shadows darting in the corners, flickers on the worn linoleum. My heart raced as I rounded the counter. Overturned stools spilled across the floor like discarded dreams. There, huddled beneath the counter, was a figure. I squinted into the dim light, hope swelling until it deflated like a punctured balloon. It was a waitress, her face drawn and hollow, eyes sunken in a manner that screamed horror. She looked up, a tremor of recognition flickered briefly before her eyes glazed over. "You shouldn't be here," she rasped, her voice a cracked whisper carefully balanced on the edge of sanity. "They won't let you leave." "Who want?" I pressed, stepping closer. I could hear the ominous hum outside, the shadows twisting and converging like black ribbons ready to devour everything that dared to confront them. "The lost," she uttered, her gaze traveling to the windows. "They're watching. Always watching. What you've brought back, it isn't done with you yet." "What do you mean?" I asked, fear creeping up my spine. "Sarah, I need to find her. Leave now, while there's still time." Her voice quaked with despair, resonating with a dark urgency. I could feel the air crackle with tension, wrapping around me like a vice. I turned to leave, desperation clawing at my throat, but the shadows in the diner morphed, swirling into forms that loomed over me, casting long fingers across the walls. Don't suddenly. The door slammed shut of its own accord, rattling beneath the weight of unseen forces. The waitress screamed, eyes wide with terror as the walls trembled. "Run! Get out!" she shrieked, flinging herself against the door. It didn't budge. Panic surged through me, and for a moment I faltered, the intrinsic fear of the dark wrapping around my heart like a coiled serpent. I could feel the shadows pressing in, whispering their promises, coaxing me to surrender. "Sarah?" I shouted, desperation spilling from my lips like spilled ink, choking on the gravity of the moment. The outline of the shadows began to take shapes, contorted faces swirling in formations that fluctuated between familiar and grotesque. Then, amidst the chaos, a sound pierced the darkness, a familiar laugh, haunting and echoing. My heart clenched painfully in my chest. It was Sarah's voice, reverberating off the walls like a sinister lullaby, embedding itself into my very soul. "Brad, help me." The plea mixed with the laughter, fragmented as if she were caught in a fray between worlds. "I'm coming," I shouted, but as I lunged toward the door, the shadows solidified into a barrier emanating from the walls, suffocating my resolve. Join us," they chanted, the darkness pulsing in rhythm, pulling at the very fabric of my essence, as if offering a seductive escape from the terror. A surge of defiance slammed through me. I turned back to the waitress, whose features were barely discernible from the gathering gloom. "How do I find her?" I screamed, eyes darting around the room for an escape. "The mirrors," she shrieked, desperation lacing her voice. "They hold the truth and the horror, but be warned, you are not alone." The mirrors. My mind whirled at the perspective echo of a trick I had seen once as a child. Were they portals? I hesitated, the oppressive shadows tightening their grip. With a wrenching cry, I dashed toward the back of the diner, dodging the grasping shadows and ignoring the pull of the abyss. I reached the restroom, the flickering light illuminating the cracked mirrors lined across the wall, each one reflecting distorted versions of myself, haunting and grotesque. That I leaned in closer, trembling. "Sarah," I cried, hoping against hope that she would hear me. I pressed my palms against the cool surface of the glass and saw her face appear for a fleeting moment, panicked, wide eyes shining with hope, before the laughter returned, drowning her out, merging with the cacophonous whispers. "Brad," she echoed, the sound warped, caught in a sinister loop. A chilling realization washed over me. I leaned in further, breath hitching in my throat. "I will find you," I yelled, my voice reverberating against the glass. But then the shadows surged, a tide of darkness crashing over me, and in that moment, something shifted. The mirror rippled like water, blurring my reflection. The last coherent image of Sarah crashed into the shadows, her face twisted in terror, as if she was being pulled into an unfathomable maw. "Brad, please." The mirror cracked, splintering from the pressure, and as shards of glass rained down, I felt a strong hand grab my wrist, yanking me back from the brink. I spun around to confront the outstretched claw of an impossibly tall figure emerging from the shadows, its breath hot against my skin, suffocating and malevolently eager. "Join us," it hissed, and in its eyes, I saw not only darkness but a reflection of my very worst fears. And just before everything imploded into chaos, the shadow whispered one final, undeniable truth: you weren't meant to find her. The weight of the creature's grip pulled me under, dragging me into an abyss where reality warped and twisted. Panic surged through me like an electric current as I fought against its icy fingers, but every effort felt futile. It was as if time and space themselves had conspired against me. The atmosphere thickened, suffocating, almost sentient, and the shadows gathered in a feral dance, swirling around my legs like smoke eager to merge with flesh. "Let me go," I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the encroaching darkness, devoured whole. The towering thing pressed closer, its face an unreadable mask of obsidian, reforming with each heartbeat, fragmenting and coalescing, as if it were crafted from nightmares. In the depths of my fright, amid the chaos, I recalled the waitress' final breathless warning: the mirrors. Time malfunctioned, branching into different paths as I found myself once again before the jagged surface of a shattered mirror. My own face stared back at me, but it was grotesquely altered. The shards reflected my fear, twisted it into madness. "Brad," a whisper fluttered through, echoing off the glass, ricocheting in the hollow chamber of my mind. It was Sarah, her voice slithering through the cracks, trembling with urgency and despair. "They know you're here, Sarah," I screamed again, pressing my palm against the jagged fragments, blood welling as it met the shards. The warmth trickled down like a warning, mixing with the darkness that trailed me, tangling with the threads of my soul. Suddenly, there was a tremor, a momentary flicker of reality, and Sarah's face became clearer, a haunting portrait of terror caught in the throes of something vast and unfathomable. "You have to," but before she could finish her thought, the mirror rippled violently, distorting her features, rehearsing anguish like a cruel loop. In that second, she transformed, from victim to spectator, sinking back into the void that birthed her despair. A spark of recognition ignited within Meth's shadows were feeding off her fear, off my grief. The creature tightened its grip, dragging me deeper into its core with a twisting malevolence that coiled around my thoughts. I could feel myself wavering, the light of hope flickering like a dying ember. My heartbeat echoed like a drum, a constant reminder that I was losing the battle, that I wasn't just fighting for Sarah anymore. I was fighting for my very soul. "Join us," the entity breathed, its voice wrapping around me like a lover's caress, sinister and intimate, reverberating with the promise of temptation, of release. I felt the remnants of Sarah's image fade, her essence siphoning away into the void, tainting the air with a grief that threatened to anchor me to despair. And then I glimpsed the outline of a new mirror, framed in gold, standing solitary against a wall cloaked in shadow. It pulsed with a waning light, emanating an energy that felt somehow familiar and terribly wrong. With a surge of determination, I tore free from the creature's grasp, stumbling toward the mirror. The world warped around me. Time stretched and compressed as I ran, dodging clawing shadows, feeling their unyielding pull as I lunged for the glimmering surface. I could hear the whispers crescendoing behind me, swarming like bees, each word imbued with icy terror. Stay, you will forget. It was all-consuming, the shadows clawing at my back as I reached out, fingertips brushing against the frame. The mirror rippled, warping my reality like a specter behind thin ice. And in that moment of contact, a surge of images flooded my mind, past, present, trials, losses, and an unrelenting darkness pooling at the edges intent on engulfing me. I steadied my breath, forcing back the rise of despair. "Sarah, I'm coming," I shouted, the vigor of my voice a beacon against the tide of malevolence raging in my ears. I thrust myself toward the glass, feeling the cold, hard promise of the surface confront me. With all the strength in my heart, I plunged through the mirror. Reality shattered around me in a crackling explosion of light and shadow, and I fell through a kaleidoscope of flickering memories and lost souls. Time twisted, wrapping around me in an eerie embrace. Just as I thought I might surface in another realm, the echoes of laughter woven with Sarah's crease of blinding light enveloped me. And then, silence. I landed hard on cold tile, the air thick with the palpable scent of mildew. Flashes of light blinked above me, neon signs reflecting distorted figures in the cramped space. I blinked, trying to focus, my pulse racing. But I was not alone. A figure stood before me, silhouetted against the flickering light, a mirror marker, eyes shining with an unsettling hunger. "Welcome back," it said, the chorus of shadows undulating behind it, filling the space with unwelcome whispers. "You've returned, but at what cost?" And as I searched for Sarah, a chilling realization cut through the depths of my being like the shards of glass scattered on the floor. Whatever was happening, this was only the beginning. The suffocating presence of the entity loomed behind me, and with a sickening lurch of dread, I understood that my hunt would soon become a nightmare that echoed beyond the mirror's edge. "Time's up," it hissed, and I felt the darkness close in around me, the air strangling with a suffocating finality. And just then, I heard her voice once more, but it was no longer a plea. It was laughter, creeping like a shadow around my being, and in that haunting moment, I realized that the darkness was not just chasing me, it had already claimed her. The air crackled like static, thick with an unsettling energy. My skin prickled, an all-too-familiar sensation creeping up my spine. The figure before me, a warped echo of humanity, watched with a grin that split its face wide, revealing jagged teeth that glinted in the harsh light. "You've brought her back, haven't you?" it taunted, its black eyes gleaming with malicious glee. "But can you save her?" As if waiting for an invitation, the surrounding shadows coalesced, stretching their tendrils toward me, actually whispering, "Join us." They beckoned in a melody both sweet and sinister. My heart raced, but I forced my gaze forward, seeking a glimpse of Sarah, of anything that resembled hope. The neon signs flickered erratically above, casting an unsettling glow on the tiled floor, which was now slick with something unidentifiably, a blend of grease and despair. "Where is she?" I shouted, desperation lacing my tone. The figure tilted its head, amusement dancing in its features. "She's right beside you," it said, its voice dripping with malicious glee. "Well, sort of. You see, every choice has a price. You opted to come back uninvited, and you will lose what little you hold dear." Suddenly, the surrounding area shimmered, the shadows morphing into images of darkened memories that scrawled across the tiles. My childhood home, overgrown with weeds, fading pictures, and the muffled cries of a younger me blended with Sarah's laughter, now twisted into a malicious cacophony. In an instant, the memories shifted, revealing a distorted reflection of the moment I had plunged into the dark abyss, a chasm that now seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. With trembling hands, I reached for the slick surface just as something shifted out of the corner of my eye. I turned sharply, my heart slamming in my chest. It couldn't be, but there she was, Sarah, standing amidst the shadows, her figure veiled in flickering darkness. A part of my heart soared, yet I quickly felt the chill seep back in. She seemed trapped, stirred by something I could not quite comprehend. "Sarah!" My cry felt like a lifeline thrown into an ocean of despair, but it only made her flinch, recoiling from the light. The figure before me laughed, a sound like cracking bones, a celebration of my torment. "She's not yours to save, Brad. She belongs to the dark now, a permanent resident." "No," I gasped, stepping forward, but the shadows surged, wrapping around my legs as though they had grown limbs of their own, dragging me backward, pulling me away from my only hope. The tiles beneath my feet were now slicked with shadows, curling around me like toxic vines. The laughter grew louder, echoing in my ears, drowning out any rational thought. With sheer force of will, I pushed against the grip of despair, breaking free, just as the room began to warp again. The air shimmered, and Sarah's form flickered like a dying flame. I could see her eyes, wide and glistening, but not with hope, only resignation. "Stay away, Brad. Please. You have to go?" she screamed, grasping at something unseen as the shadows pulled her away, enclosing her in a cocoon of darkness. "Sarah?" I lunged forward, but the darkness swelled, and tentacles of shadow ensnared me once more. My cries joined hers, a desperate duet echoing in the hollow space. Coupling with the laughter of the figure that loomed just outside of reality, its eyes shining with sick amusement. "You should have never come back," it hissed, its voice a chilling blend of every terror I had ever faced. "Now face the consequences. You've awakened it." The creature's words sunk in like nails in my flesh. I remembered the whispers from the darkness, the rules of this cursed place, the catastrophic consequences for breaking them. The walls closed in like the jaws of a beast, and the last remnants of Sarah's figure melted away, swallowed into the void, leaving nothing but echoes of her fading screams behind. Without thinking, I raced for the mirror, desperately clawing at the surface as it hid the truth. I could feel the shadows tightening around me, their whispers growing ominous, promising my doom. I didn't know what awaited me when I plunged through, but there was no choice. I needed answers, needed a way to reach Sarah. Just before I leapt, the figure grasped my shoulder, its grip exuding a chill that burned. "You'll regret this," it growled, and with a swift motion, I broke free. I threw myself through the mirror once more, feeling reality tear apart around me. The abyss yawned before me, unwelcoming, and laughter taunted me from behind the wolfish creature that spun off shadows, maliciously feeding on fear and regret. But this time, as I fell endlessly through the dark, I swallowed the rising tide of panic. I would unravel the nightmare shrouding Sarah. I had to. Determination formed an icy wall around my fear yet. As a final thought echoed through my consciousness, it blurred the line between courage and madness. What if she was never meant to be saved? And just as the thought coalesced, I landed hard against a familiar surface. The ground was cold, but this time it wasn't tiles or shadows. It was soft, like rustling leaves underfoot. I opened my eyes, and horror crashed upon me anew as I recognized the forest surrounding me. The trees were twisted, gnarled like broken bones, their branches clawing at the sky in silent agony. Flashes of light pulsed from deep within the woods, drawing me closer, propelling me further down the twisted path. It was then that I understood. I wasn't just haunted by the shadows, that I was in their realm now. But as I took a hesitant step forward, I felt a tug at my heart, a whisper that twisted my name. "Brad," it echoed from somewhere deep in the woods, a soft, eerie call that split the darkness. And in that moment, I realized the hunt was far from over. The light flickered around me, casting bizarre shadows that danced like wraiths in the dimness of the forest. Each step I took resonated with the eerie stillness, a lullaby of dread that cradled the air. My breath quickened as the whispered calls grew louder, entwined with the rustling of the gnarled branches overhead. It felt like an invitation, but one laced with sinister intent. "Brad," the voice drifting on a chilling breeze, and I pressed forward, led by an overwhelming sense of urgency mixed with dread. Each pulse of light drew me closer, and I fought against the rising panic swelling in my gut, reminding myself of the stakes. Sarah was out here somewhere, veiled in whispers and shadows, but the woods seemed alive, wrapping around me with sinister intent. Leaves rustled, but not from the wind. Instead, it felt as if they were communicating in hushed tones, exchanging secrets in some forbidden language. I felt the sensation of being watched, yet every time I turned to look, I was met only with the twisted silhouettes of trees and the creeping fog that danced at my feet. Soon, the whispered calling began to morph. It was joined by a chorus of voices, muffled cries carried through the air, twisted versions of laughter and sorrow mixing together, to form a terrifying melody of despair. Panic clawed at my throat as I stumbled deeper into the thicket, the pulsating light now catching my eye through the dense trunks. I pressed on, despite the increasing weight of fear mounting in my chest. And then, I found Ida clearing bathed in eerie luminescence. At its center, a massive tree loomed, its bark blackened and twisted, roots sprawling out like skeletal fingers. The source of the light emerged from within the heart of the tree. An ethereal glow pulsated like a heartbeat, casting specters of light and dark flitting around the clearing. I could feel the air crackling with energy, sending electric shocks through my spine. "Sarah," I called, my voice trembling with the weight of the unknown. My heart raced, amplifying each second of silence that followed. As the eerie glow flickered, I stepped closer, compelled by an unseen force, as dozens of eyes materialized in the dim light, glistening crimson and watching. An anticipation hung thick in the air, responding to my presence with a sinister hum. "Brad," came the voice again, more urgent and desperate this time, pulling me forward. It was unmistakably Sarah's, but there was a twisted timbre echoing behind it, a darkness intertwined within her words. The glow flickered again, illuminating the gnarled tree, revealing carvings etched into the bark that twisted and contorted like faces in agony. "What have you done?" Each face seemed to whisper as I stepped back, horrified. They morphed around the tree, the pulse of the light feeling alive, manipulating the air around me. Each carving whispered secrets, tales of those who had come before me, souls bound to the very ground I stood upon, their fate entwined with the shadows that snared them. "Brad." The voice, now echoing in a distorted manner, filled the air with both longing and terror. "Help me." I dashed forward, driven by an instinctual need, but as I approached the tree, the ground beneath me vibrated violently, and the shadows coalesced into a thick mass at the base. I stumbled, feeling the chill of the darkness reach out, grasping at my ankles. It felt as if the very roots beneath me were alive, pulling me toward the heart of that malevolent tree. "No!" I screamed, struggling against the grip of despair. The closer I got to the source of the glow, the more urgent Sarah's voice became, morphing into a chorus of screams that echoed in my mind. The shadows around me thickened, swirling into a maelstrom of darkness, and I could see figures forming both gleaming and ghastly, beckoning me to join them in their eternal torment. I could feel their cold breath washing over me, urging me to succumb to the inevitable. "Please, Brad. You have to choose." Sarah's voice shattered the cacophony like glass. "You can't save me without sacrificing your own light." In that split second, I realized the choice laid before me was far grimmer than I had anticipated. Save her and lose myself to darkness, or flee and risk her soul forever entwined in this hellish landscape. But before I could react, thick branches shot from the tree, wrapping around my waist and arms, pulling me toward its gaping maw at the trunk. The overwhelming sensation of despair welled up, suffocating, visceral, consuming all hope. "Choose now, or she will vanish forever." The shadows growled menacingly, the forest vibrating with their malice, and "oh" was all I could muster as I gripped the bark with a desperate claw, helplessly fighting against the grasping tendrils. And just when I believed everything was lost, the ethereal glow pulsed brighter, and a face emerged, a vision of Sarah, her features distorted by anguish and sorrow, floating within the light. "Brad," she cried, desperation fueling her ethereal form. "You can't let them take you. Fight." "I love you." But before I could answer, the shadows swelled and tightened their grip, pulling me toward the maw of darkness that yawned open before me. As I felt the world rip apart around me, and Sarah's final cry echoed in my mind, I braced for the end. Yet, in that terrifying moment, my vision blurred and flickered. I was thrust into the intangible where reality shattered once more, a darkness so consuming that it swallowed my very essence. In that torrent of despair, a single thought crystallized in my mind. What if the price of love truly was the soul? As the darkness enveloped me, the last thing I felt was the cruel grip of defeat, a whisper of uncertainty threading through my thoughts, and then, nothing. The clarity was all-consuming. I awoke in the silence of the void, the crushing darkness surrounding me like thick fog. I gasped, though no air filled my lungs. A weightless sensation enveloped me, keeping me suspended between being and nothingness. The echo of Sarah's voice reverberated in my mind, a haunting melody draped in despair. I reached out, grasping for something tangible, anything to pull me back from the precipice I felt teetering on. But just as hope flickered within the obscurity, I felt a pull-in insistent tug that urged me forward. A faint glimmer appeared, like a weak star struggling against a relentless night. I followed it, driven by an instinct I couldn't fully comprehend, a deep need to break the chains of this haunting midnight. As I approached the light, unfamiliar sensations crashed over me, raw and overwhelming. Whispers floated through the air, mingling with the darkness, the same chorus of voices I'd heard in the woods, now more fragmented and urgent, rising like a tide of cold dread. The specters grew clearer, faces illuminated by the dim glow, their expressions twisted in eternal agony and longing. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, reaching out with gnarled fingers, their screams echoing in muted agony. A sense of familiarity gnawed at me. They were the lost souls, the ones I had glimpsed in the tree's bark. My heart raced as I realized I was not only a witness to their torment, but could also feel their pain mingling with my own. It was suffocating. "Brad, save us!" a voice shrieked, the soul's face contorting with palpable fear, its eyes veiled and shadowed. "No!" I shouted, recoiling at their pleas, the shadows clawing at me once more. "I can't." The ground beneath me shifted, swirling like malicious water, and I felt myself being drawn into the darkness. Just as I thought I would be submerged, I broke through the haze into another realm, in Tyrelia, forgotten dimension that felt alive yet decayed. Crumbling walls rose around me, dripping with a thick substance that felt warm and putrid. I was not alone. Figures emerged from the shadows, spectral forms shifting and flickering, their eyes swirling pits of despair. They drifted closer, whispering in sibilant tones, "It is here. You've come for the truth, haven't you?" "What truth?" I gasped, the echoes of Sarah's name flooding my thoughts. "Where is she?" "Lost," they replied, their voices dripping with sorrow. "She is forever bound to the tree. To save her you must descend. My heart thundered in my chest. "Into what? What do you mean?" "The roots hold the secrets," they sang in unison. "Sacrifice must be made, darkness hungers, and the tree demands a price. Yours or hers, what will you give?" Just then, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet, and the figures surrounded me, their frigid fingers brushing against my skin, sending spiderwebs of icy terror creeping up my spine. I could see now that the walls of this forgotten place were etched with faces like the whispers in the woods. They were trapped beyond the realm of life, screaming without sound. A thought flickered through my mind, igniting a fear I struggled to suppress. Was this punishment? A cycle I'd never break free from. In a moment of reckless determination, I surged forward, a bead of light emerging from the cracks of despair ahead. The sound of rapid breaths grew louder, entwining with rhythmic thudding. I clawed through the air, relentless in my pursuit. There had to be an answer, a way to save her, to escape this ghastly limbo. But just as I reached for the light, an anguished wail erupted from behind me. I turned in horror to see the very fabric of this realm ripping apart, a gaping abyss unveiling itself. It quivered, filled with echoes of what could have been what was lost. The shadows within were angry, seething with fury as they pushed me closer to the edge. "You cannot escape," they howled, their voices a cacophony of despair. Suddenly, an urgent voice broke through the chaos, a shriek that was unmistakably Sarah's, intertwining with my own heartbeat. "Brad, no, don't. You'll lose us both." The ground lurched violently underfoot, and I stumbled toward the chasm. I could see her, just beyond the fray, tethered to the twisted roots of the tree. Her form flickered like a candle in a tempest, the light of her soul battling against a monstrous darkness that loomed around her, consuming everything in its path. I lunged forward to reach her. Freezing tendrils of shadow spiraled around my legs, anchoring me in place, pulling me toward my demise. The whispers crescendoed into wrathful screams, and I was left hanging on a potent precipice where time and reality warped at the edges. As I felt myself slipping and Sarah's screams pulsed through me, I closed my eyes for a moment. In that instant, a piercing clarity struck me. If I could harness the truth of despair to break this cycle? What if the key to my salvation was in their anguish? But before I could act on this chilling revelation, the shadows surged and twisted, the screams and whispers melting into a riotous roar that drowned all reason. The ground gave way. The last thing I grasped was loneliness, and then darkness swallowed me whole. In that inky void, the most terrifying thought occurred to me. Perhaps love was not enough to combat the consuming shadows. But then again, would it ever truly want to let us go? And then, as the world around me folded in on itself, a pulse of brilliant light emerged from the shadows, surging toward me with the force of 1,000 storms, wrenching my very existence apart. I found myself hurled back into the same suffocating darkness that had embraced me before, yet this time it felt different, charged with an electric ferocity that clawed at my sanity. My heart raced as I awaited the impact, but the ground beneath me never arrived. Instead, I hovered, caught in a tumult of thoughts and emotions swirling like a tempest, the echoes of despair collapsing together to form a visceral cacophony. "Help us!" The voices cried, but they weren't just the lost souls. They were compounding, swirling into a singular plea. "You're one of us now." And suddenly, the vivid light erupted again, slicing through the void. I blinked against the radiance and felt it tugging me, away from the despairing chorus and toward a flickering memory. It was a moment from my childhood, of glancing over my shoulder to see Sarah laughing in the sunlight, her hair fluttering like the wings of a bird. The memory was smothered under a wave of darkness, yet intensely vivid, a reminder of a life I yearned to reclaim. But in my distraction, the shadows began to coalesce, forming into shapes that twisted and morphed unnaturally. Faces emerged within the shadows, contorted in agony, and I realized they weren't just specters. They were reflections of my own fears, each one whispering a fragment of truth. "You failed them. You failed her." "No," I roared, the sound reverberating through the abyss, but it rang hollow against the encroaching dread. My despair morphed into anger, boiling within me as I fought against the shadows gripping my limbs with relentless ferocity. In a desperate act of defiance, I shouted into the darkness, "I will not succumb to you." A surge of warmth flooded from my heart, a brilliant glow radiating outward like a beacon. It grew brighter, blinding me, but as it shone, the shadows retreated, howling in fury. They twisted and contorted, writhing around me as if I had lit a fire within their hollow core. Suddenly, I grasped the edges of reality and found myself standing once more at the foot of the tree, the gnarled, ancient structure that had lured me into this nightmarish existence. But now it was different, drenched in a nightmarish splendor, the bark shimmering in iridescent shades of crimson that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was thick with a suffocating charge, and I felt the pull of the roots beneath me, their sinister whispers beckoning with an urgency. "Join her. Free her. Embrace your role in the cycle." "Where is she?" I yelled, desperate and frantic, searching for a sign of Sarah. The shadows beneath the ground seethed and swirled ominously at my feet, forming rippling patterns that captivated and terrified me in equal measure. "Choose." The voices shrieked, their words melding into a tremendous roar, vibrating through the very ground. The darkness hungers. In an instinctual battle, I bent my will against the demands of the shadows, forcing light to surge forth from the depth of my torment, and the immense trees split with the sound of thunder. Then I heard her voice in a whisper, sharp like glass. "Brad, you have to decide." Panic clawed at my throat. "What do I do? I can't lose you." "You must let go," she replied, the sorrow in her voice lapping at the edges of my resolve. "You have to trust." Suddenly, the world around me shifted violently, the branches of the tree arching unnaturally, casting grotesque shadows that danced frantically around me. I realized with a growing dread that the decision was indeed mine. I could succumb to the darkness, fulfill the demands of this malevolent force, and save her, or I could forge my own path, breaking the ties that threatened to drag me into this abyss forever. The roots gnashed and writhed, hungry and coiling tightly around my ankles, anchoring me in place while a tempest of shadows twisted overhead. My heartbeat quickened, the weight of my choice pressing upon me like an unyielding shroud. The moment stretched on, a knot of time and indecision, and just as I resolved to forge my destiny, reality trembled. The shadows seemed to hiss, a sharp intake of breath that reverberated through the looming dark. "You think you can escape?" they screeched, the laughter of 100 tortured souls ripping through the darkness. Before I could react, the ground erupted beneath me, my feet giving way as the roots unfurled and soured into a monstrous maw. I fell down, consumed by a void that promised all the answers. Yet as I plummeted through the dark, a chilling voice echoed in the distance, a whisper so soft and chilling it froze me in midair. "Brad, don't look back." And then came the blinding light, a furious surge that enveloped my consciousness, propelling me into an abyss that felt all too familiar. But this time the darkness seemed alive, hungry, and waiting. In the depths of an eternal twilight, I found myself suspended between worlds, lost in a dreamscape of shadows and echoes. A haze clung to my senses, binding me in disorientation, yet the whispers persisted, weaving through my thoughts like an insistent fog. "You've returned. You've brought your despair." Their tones brushed against my skin, and the weight of their intentions loomed heavy that I pushed through the thick air, the memories of Sarah flooding back, the laughter wrapped in warmth now twisted into something sinister. "Where are you?" I called into the incessant darkness, but there was no reply, only the twisted chorus echoing back, taunting me. Join us, join us." The figures swirled around me, faces lost in agony, arms outstretched as if they longed for release. "You must choose," a voice urged. It echoed like a summons from the depths. Each face was a mosaic of pain and suffering, a reflection of my own turmoil. I stumbled, grappling with the suffocation of their despair as the overwhelming force of dread threatened to drag me under. I refused to succumb. The vibrant image of Sarah's smile shattered through the haze, her laughter that once graced the air now intertwined with calls to join the void. I took a deep breath, a fierce determination igniting within, driving me forward. "I will save her," I declared, disregarding the figures that writhed around me, consuming the remaining light. With every step, the shadows surged and writhed, adding their weight to the atmosphere, the suffocating pressure of countless souls entrapped. "You cannot save her," they insisted, merging into a singular identity. But as I plunged deeper into the void, I could feel the pulse of my own heart pounding in resistance, each thump driving me closer to my goal. I had to find her. I had to go back. Suddenly, an intense burst of luminescence erupted from beneath the roots of the gnarled tree, its brightness cutting through the murky depths that threatened to consume every glimmer of hope. I could make out a swirling portal within the heart of the tree, the flickering light revealing haunting silhouettes dancing just outside its reach. "Sarah!" I screamed, the urgency of my voice mingling with the chaos around me, unwilling to let the darkness sway my resolve. But then, as if anticipating my desperation, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the light. It was her, Sarah, the warmth of her essence radiating as if it defied the very nature of the darkness surrounding her. Yet as she stepped forward, she appeared different, her eyes shadowed with a depth of sorrow that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come back, Brad." Her voice was both haunting and familiar, dripping with a timeless sadness that sent ripples of dread coursing through me. My breath hitched as I stared at her, shock and disbelief igniting within. "I couldn't leave you. They'll fight for you. I will bring you back." I reached out, straining against the pull of the shadows, grasping for the image of the woman I had loved through years and trials. But her expression morphed, the happiness extinguished, replaced by an unsettling calm. "You cannot save me, but you can save yourself," she whispered, the sorrow heavy on her breath. I felt an electric chill wash over me, as if the allure of her words slipped through my fingers like sand. "Please, I won't lose you. They'll pull you back from this darkness," I yelled, my voice cracking, the shimmering light around her flickering. She stepped closer, and yet, as she did, the shadows around her thickened like a smothering blanket, enveloping her essence in a chilling embrace. "Oh, Brad." Her eyes held a grave knowing, a understanding so profoundly deep that it paralyzed my heart. "You must let me go." Panic surged within me. Every instinct screamed at the futility of her words. "No, I won't abandon you," I shouted, scrambling to reach past the dark tendrils that coiled at my feet. She was there, begging me to believe in a truth I could hardly grasp, a truth laced with despair. Choose. The voices echoed once more, the shadows encircling, their presence a relentless tide. Join us. Or her. In that moment, a terrible clarity washed over me, and I understood I was not just at war with the dark, but also with my own fears, the sacrifices of love that trapped us both. What if her freedom came only at the cost of my own? I froze, my heart thundering violently against the pulse of darkness. Brad, you have to fight the darkness with the love we've built. Fight it for us. Her words cut through the chaos like a blade, igniting a flame within the void. Images of our laughter and life swirled in my memory, igniting within me the indomitable strength of our connection. I choose to remember. I cried, a raw, primal scream erupting, and all at once I felt the surging warmth that defined my love, the laughter, the passion. Every shared moment became my weapon against the encroaching shadows. But then, a terrible truth coiled around my heart. I heard the whispers again, echoing with malice, mocking my resolve. You cannot choose love without sacrificing. As the void pressed in, I felt her slipping, the darkness tightening around her ethereal form as it attempted to draw her back into the abyss. No, I lunged forward, desperate, the shadows churning in fury around me. I felt the roots teeming with anguish, alive with pain, trying to anchor me to despair that I choose to let go. I shouted, even as my heart shattered, knowing the price of love. I could not selfishly hold on to her. Her light had to break free. I ripped away the tendrils trying to bind me to fear, and with that, a dazzling light surged from within me, a blinding purity ignited by the very essence of our love. As it blasted outward, the shadows recoiled, writhing in agony, their hollers engulfed by the brilliance. My heart pounded heavily as I grasped for Sarah, the brilliance of love illuminating the darkness that held us both captive. Each pulse surged with power, spreading through the shadows and warming the coldness gnawing at my bones. And just then, I saw a hair-off flicker of hope amid the chaos. Brad, she gasped, a final spark igniting in her eyes as she felt the pull of my energy. Fight for us, Brad. With one final, resolute push of will, I shattered the last chains binding my, following her back into the light, feeling the very fabric of our love tearing through the malevolence that sought to imprison us. Sarah took flight from the shadows, a fiery burst of purity reclaiming her essence as she dashed toward the light. The darkness screamed, its echoes rising in fury, but the strength of our intertwined spirits fought against the tide of oblivion. Together, we yelled, voices merging, as the brilliance exploded into an incandescent flame that banished the shadows within the tree. The world erupted in a vibrant fury, and for a heartbeat, just one precious heartbeat, we were free. But as the dust settled, the darkness could be seen gathering, still swirling, palpably awaiting its next chance to reclaim what it could not hold on to. The lingering shadows whispered, "You may have one today, but the night is patient and it remembers." With that, I awoke again, gasping on the cold, hard floor of my shop, heartsick and trembling. But in the shrouded corners of existence, I could see the darkness flitting just beyond the light, the remnants of what I thought I had conquered. And in the soft, eerie silence that filled the air, the horrifying realization unfurled within me. She would always be trapped, and so would I, eternally tethered to the darkness. As I peered towards the wash bay mirror, its surface rippled like a disturbed pond, I heard the chilling whispers echo louder than ever. "You can never truly escape us," and as I turned away, the doubt burrowed deep, gnawing at my sanity like the darkness that clung to my very soul. "Join us," they crooned softly, waiting patiently for the moment to strike again. In the depths of my heart, a singular thought remained. I may have escaped the abyss, but I was still lost.